That was a good start. Thank you, Dave, for asking me along to share my experience, Strength of Hope. I'm Darren. I'm a grateful recovered addict just for today. Um, this time last year, I was in the depths of despair, barely living, just existing. Uh, but today I'm sat here, on a meeting that was suggested just suggested for me to come on in my early days. 17 days off being 1 year clean and sober. Um, you know, uh, yeah, it's not the first time I've had a stint of sobriety, but I will talk about that a bit more when I get into it. Um, you know, I love drugs from the minute I picked them up. I really did. From a kid, I was full of fear and anxiety from a very young age. I'd worry about these things. Um, I'd go to bed uh, thinking that my mum's going to die all the time. The world's going to blow up. I'd worry myself sick all the time. Um, yeah, thinking all these. I had this catastrophic thinking from a very young age. I still got it today. Don't get me wrong. Um, you know, and then I got introduced to cannabis, and straight away, I loved the stuff. From the age of like 13, 12, 13, I started smoking that. And, I loved it because it quieted my head down. It gave me that ease and comfort that I never had before. I could sleep easy. I went to bed and I could put my head on the pillow and I could have a good night's sleep. But you know, for me, as being an addict, just buying a little bit here and there was never enough for me. So, you know, I started selling it. I think I was 17. Started selling the stuff, and I got in a police chase. This is the consequences of this is my using. I got into a police chase, and as like I say, the consequences come in quite early. I got into a bit of trouble around it. Uh, Fast forward a bit, when I was about 17, it's the first time I tried the first class A drug. It was, I picked up a pipe, a crack pipe. Never even knew where it was really. Uh, luckily I never got into it. But, from 17, 18, I started going out drinking. Um, Started drinking at the age of 18. Absolutely loved it. I'm not going to deny any of this. I absolutely love drinking drugs. You know, it was because it was fun for me. I used to like going out. I used to like it'd give me that Dutch courage that I could be around people. It gave me the confidence that I could talk to women. When I drank, I felt like a Superman. I put this cape on, um, and yeah, then Friday nights, turned into just a Friday night, and then it'd be a Saturday night. And it wasn't before long I was doing like Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday nights, and then it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it was all good fun when I was younger. Um, and yeah, like I say, I just loved it. I loved going out. I loved the effects that it gave me. It did for me what I couldn't do for myself. It gave me confidence. Um, yeah, it just made me feel really good and at ease. Um, but fast forward a few years, um, I get with this woman who's my wife today, um, and we start using cocaine together. She finds out that I take it. Um, it gave me a green flag to use with her. But again, like I say, my using spiraled out of control. Um, when I'd go to work every morning and I'd be thinking, because I'd be rough from the night before, I'd be thinking, why have I done this again? Getting in that cycle, go driving to work, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to use, I'm not going to use, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to use. As the day goes on, uh, my head starts clearing. I get some food in me. I start waking up a bit, and I get stuck back in that cycle again. And finish work, I'll go straight to the off license. And I do that for many years. I just stuck in that cycle, and I do it. I've drank and used for years, day after day after day, but not really wanting to do it, and not really knowing what I suffered with. Not understanding what was going on with me. And I can remember I rang my wife one morning, and I'd say to her, "Why can't I feel like this at night time or in the day? In the mornings, I felt like shit. I knew exactly that I didn't want to use. If I was going to be put on a lie detector that morning and say that I was never going to use or drink and use again, I would have passed it, because that's how I felt in the mornings. But like I say, it just kept coming around. By dinner time, I'll be back on it again. I'd just get stuck in that cycle all the time. And I just kept. At one point, I used to say to everybody, "I'm like a machine," because I was doing it, and I went to work every day. So I've got this obsessive behaviour. So it's not just I'm not just addicted to drink and drugs. I'm addicted to all sorts. I'm addicted to drink, food, sweets, work, money, anything, because that's just the way I am. It's been like that from a very young age. And I say that I felt like I was a machine, but then this machine started to get unwell and started breaking down, and I felt my head started going really funny, and I didn't know why I could not stop doing this. There was many times, for about, I don't know, probably 5 6 years, I never left to go to work and come back home sober. My kids never see me come back in my house for years, from leaving to go to work to come back in sober. Um, and like I say, I started getting very unwell. My head was going crazy. Um, I was thinking about hurting myself. I never really thought about suicide, at this point. But I was thinking weird things, I was thinking about how I could make myself ill to try to make myself stop doing what I was doing. So I didn't have a clue about all recovery. I didn't know about CA. It was, yeah, I was just so lost, and I just didn't understand what was going on. And one day I said, I took my dog for a walk. I don't know what it was. Decided to pick my phone up, and I Googled rehabs. And I rang the first rehab that was near me. I spoke to this lady. She'd been in recovery. She talked to me, and she convinced, well, not convinced, yeah, she convinced me that, yeah, I definitely need to go to rehab. I went home and I said to my wife, I walked through the door, and I said to her, I'm going to go to rehab because, I'm an addict. I am absolutely fucked. Sorry for my language, And she was like, thank God my prayers have been answered. Um, so, I've drank and used all these years. I've, worked hard. I've spent all my money. Uh, I've had all this external stuff because this was the kind of person I am. I like to have external stuff still, so I work hard and, but I didn't really have no money. I didn't have no savings, but I needed to go to rehab. So I went off to rehab for 3 weeks because that's all I could afford. I had to take a loan out for this, by the way, as well, because, no one was going to pay for me to go to rehab or anything like that. So I went to rehab for 3 weeks. I left my poor family at home. I'm the breadwinner. My wife's at home looking after two kids. I went away, and I still didn't quite. I got it. I spent 3 weeks in there. I learned a lot about myself. I come out, and I didn't want to come to meetings. I still wanted to do it on Darren's will. You know, I went to a few meetings. I didn't like them. I didn't get them. I didn't want to come to a meeting. Um, yeah, I had 21 months, 22 months, sorry, of sobriety. My family got a glimpse of what life could have been like with me sober. But in them 22 months, this is what I've learned today being in the program is that, in them 22 months that I was sober, I wasn't really sober because I was still a very sick man. I had this obsessive behavior of wanting to work long hours. I was doing like 16 hours at work. I was still very unwell in the head. I kept going back to the doctors. I went from 10 milligrams of antidepressants to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50. And, in all that time, just a week or two before relapse, my son got badly bit in the face by a dog. I'll mention this because it always comes up with me quite bad. Is that, yeah, I know he sat next to me and it really got to me and hurt me, but I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody. Yeah, I didn't have any armor. I didn't have any fellows. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I only had my wife. I kind of used my wife as a sponsor when I come out of rehab. Um, and I went to this wedding, and me and my wife stopped drinking with me at the same time, so she had this clean time with me for like 22 months. And went to a wedding, and there was handing out these bottles of Peroni. I can remember it. It was sunny, and I spoke to my wife, and I said to her, I said, I could drink like a gentleman again. I said I've done it for 22 months. There's we've got this. We'll only drink on occasions. We'll only drink when something's going on, a party. All that stuff. And anyway, so we drank. Within a couple of drinks, I was picking up the packet again, and I was off running again. As quick as I was before. Where I left it before in rehab, and I started again 22 months later. The candle where I left that burning started burning again at the same time, at the same place. But not only did it start burning at the same place, it started burning faster. My life started spiraling out of control very, very quickly. Um, I was just letting everybody down. I was letting my family down. I was hiding it from people this time. I was drinking in my garage. I was pissing in my garage in bottles. I was doing, just weird stuff. I was getting anything I could get my hands on. I was sniffing my wife's pre-gabblings because I didn't want to be here no more. I was getting really down and I didn't know why I was doing this. I was just got stuck back on that cycle again. Of I really didn't know what was up with me. You know, so then it goes off to rehab again, and I come back out. I go to a meeting in Lincoln, uh, first ever CA meet, a proper CA meeting, and I got myself a sponsor there, and he gave me some daily directions and suggestions, and people started ringing me up. I lasted 3 days, and I texted him and I said, I said, this ain't for me, you know. And within 6 weeks, I was back out the door again. It was just crazy. I didn't want to be like this yet, but I didn't want to find a solution. I just kept going around, around, around in circles. You know, everybody's getting sick of me. My boss is getting sick of me. My wife's getting sick of me. My mum's worried like mad about me. My kids are crying. They don't want to be near me, around me, or anything like that. You know, and then I come back into the rooms again. I did a week, and then these fellows was ringing me up, making sure that I was all right on a Friday. Said, Darren, you are at sound, yeah, because I struggled on a Friday. Sun's out and this, that, and other. and I do something completely off the cuff. I drive home. I go straight to a pub in a different town from my town. Um, you know, and I went out drinking all night. I'd sent my missus a message. Ended up after I've been out drinking, I gets into my van, and I put a leaf blower in there. I tried to kill myself. Luckily I passed out. The leaf blower conked out, and then I woke come around a few hours later, and then I drives my van through a brick wall into a quarry. And I believe this is the first time. I say that I never really believed in God, but sometimes I'd lay there at nights, praying to Him that I'd never ever die, and leave my kids behind. But I never really believed in God, so I said, But when I crashed my van through that brick wall into a quarry, I was the first time I knew God was there, putting His hand on my shoulder and telling me, this is not for you, Darren. This is not your time, because I should have not been here that day when I did that. I was cut out of it. Rushed into hospital. My van was a complete write-off. If you see the pictures of it, I shouldn't be here. And do you know what? From that day, I was laid on my sofa at home. After I come out of hospital, I was on oral morph, and I said, just something come over me. I said, "You got to stop taking this, Darren. You will get addicted to this." And this is where my step one come in. And I know I'm completely powerless over any kind of drink or drug, anything. I stopped taking this oral morphine. I managed to get through a week on my own, and yeah, sorry, this is just a drink. Yeah, I had a week at home. I went over to this meeting in Lincoln, and I was busted and broken. I mean, I was like covered in bruises, could barely walk, could barely talk from the accident. Went back into the meeting, and I saw my sponsor. I said, "Look, I've put my hands up. I am fucked. I need help." And he said, "Absolutely." He he just gave me them same daily directions to do. I've done them now for 347 days. Just keep. At first it was I've got to ring him on time. Pray and meditate. Ring him on time. Call two newcomers. 90 meetings in 90 days. And then we went through the 12 steps. I never thought that this big book here would save my life. And this is where I'll go. I had 22 months of sobriety, and I was still unwell. 347 days today, and it's the best. It's the best I have ever felt in my life. This is going back from me being a kid to now. Don't get me wrong, I don't feel like it every single day, because it's an emotional roller coaster for me. I've had a few shitty weeks the last couple of weeks. But if I didn't carry on working my program like I do, it would have been a lot worse. And going through the 12 steps and having that spiritual awakening, I didn't really know what that meant for me in the early days and everything. But I do know having that psychic change now, I don't have to wake up in the morning thinking about using and drinking and, owing money out all the time. My head's not busy. I can remember when I first come into this, my sponsor said to me, I was talking to someone, and I said about not having enough time for doing this, because my head was always busy. Today my head's not busy anymore. I have plenty of room in it. I get up in the morning with my wife. My wife's a big part of my recovery, and I spoke about her a lot in it. She works as sister fellowship to ours. Very, very lucky. The first time I went back to the CA, she got a sponsor. She got passed on to this other fellowship, and we've been working our recovery side by side uh, through all of this. And thank God I have as well, because she has been absolute rock for me. We have this morning routine that we do. I get up in the morning, I pray, I meditate. She will do her prayers and meditate. We started to go out for an half an hour walk together. She's got hip dysplasia, so we can't walk too far. But we'll come back again and we'll read from the big book. We do some other literature. We read the daily reflections, we read 3 other different books as Bill sees it, and a couple other more. We have this strong connection with each other in the morning. It just sets me up for the day. My life today is absolutely fantastic. I'm calm most of the time. I have peace in my life today. I love my family. I've always loved my family. Somebody said on a meeting the other day, they die for the kids, but why not, instead of dying for your kids, why not try living for your kids? I love that saying. I want to live for my children today. I've put them through a lot of shit in the past, and I owe them everything. I've got to do them and then live in amends for the rest of my life. I never want to see them the way I was before. I help people today. Something that I've never really been, because I've been a selfish, self-centered piece of work in the past. I've never thought twice of anybody else but myself. It was all about me, what I could get from life. Everything was revolved. It doesn't matter if it was birthdays, Christmas, weddings, funerals, whatever. It all evolved around me and what I could get from it, from what I could get from my drinking and my using. But like I say, life's not like that today. I love helping other people. I have sponsees myself. I took a few people through the work, and I love seeing the light come on in their eyes when they do the work. That's what keeps me going today. I'm no spiritual guru or any big book thumper. All I know is what I've been told to do from the very early days, and I just keep on doing it. I still pray. I struggled with the praying at first. I'll admit that. But I keep doing it, and I have to keep doing it because I do not want to go back to that old life. Because this new life that I've got today is better than I've ever had. Yeah, I think I'm just waffling on a bit there now, but I just got God does for me what I can't do for myself today, and I do honestly believe that. I'll leave it there. Thanks a lot, Dave.